So today we're going to talk about a really important concept, probably the most important concept when it comes to playing jazz. How do you really swing? How can you learn how to swing? Is it something that somebody can sit in a room and tell you, do these exact things and you will be the swingingest musician who has ever lived? Or is it something different than that? Well, it's my opinion, and don't tell anybody this. A teacher cannot teach you how to swing. They can't. It's just a fact. Now, as a teacher, I can teach you how to do a lot of things that are going to make you better at jazz. I guarantee that. Swinging? Not one of those things. So in music and life, there are tangible things and intangible things. And swing is about the most intangible thing I can possibly think of. I mean, can you even define swing, really? Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking to yourself, well, yeah, it's 2/8 notes with an underlying triplet feel. And you'd be kind of right, but you wouldn't be totally 100% right. I mean, let's think about some jazz musicians that we would call swinging. I mean, I can think of 100 right off the top of my head. Now, I would call them all some of the most swinging musicians that I've ever heard in my life, but they all swing in a slightly different way. That's what makes their music so beautiful and identifiable and amazing. So if they're all what we would call swinging, and they all aren't doing exactly the same thing, we can't really define what swing is, can we? And that means that I can't really teach it to you. So if anybody tells you that they can teach you how to be a really swinging musician, just walk away, because they can't. You've got to do this yourself through the tradition of the music. So let's take a concrete example. John Coltrane and Johnny Griffin are two musicians that I would consider very, very swinging. But they play in completely different styles, and the way that they swing is so different. Where they play in the beat, how they phrase, they could not be any more different from each other. So how do you really learn how to swing? Well, jazz is an oral tradition, right? And when it comes to talking about swing and feel, there's nothing that typifies that phrase oral tradition more than learning how to swing. So here's the answer. You have to learn it from records, from your favorite musicians. There simply is no other way to learn how to swing and develop your own conception of how you want to sound. So let me tell you about the people that I totally 100% credit with my ability to swing at all. The first person is Dexter Gordon, probably my favorite saxophone player who has ever lived. And there's actually one record I can point to, Doing All Right, that I really feel like made the biggest impact on me and taught me how to swing more than anything else in my life. See, when I was a kid, my dad had this record laying around the house. And from one of the first times that I heard this record, I became totally and completely obsessed with it. So much so that I literally put this record on and played along with it every single day for an entire year. And that's not a joke. It was literally every day for a year. And when I didn't have this record on with my horn out, I was listening to it on my own time. So what that did for me, I got to know this record so well, and I could play every single little thing that Dexter played on the whole record. And I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I wasn't thinking, hey, this is going to set me up for the rest of my life as a musician, learning how to swing like Dexter. I was just doing it because I loved it. And I wanted to sound like Dexter. I was obsessed with it. But really, I can credit this record as really teaching me more about swing than anything else in my entire life. So the second musician and record that was so important to me, the musician was Clark Terry. Now, this came a little bit later in life. When I was in high school and when I was attending the University of New Hampshire, I got the great opportunity to hang out with Clark Terry a lot. He was a visiting artist, and we would hang out a couple times a year and play music, and it was just amazing. So after meeting Clark and getting really acquainted with his music, I became obsessed. And there was one record, which was actually not a Clark Terry record, it was an Oscar Peterson record. It was called the Oscar Peterson Trio +1, and that +1 was Clark Terry. And again, this was another one of those recordings that I just became obsessed with. Like every day I would wake up and one of the first thoughts on my mind would be, let me put on that record. So I did the same thing that I did with the Dexter Gordon recording. I learned just about every single note and every single phrase that Clark played, and I learned how to recreate that on my instrument. And naturally, I started sounding a lot like Clark Terry. And I can't think of many better things than that, to sound like Clark Terry story. And as I said before, the coolest part about how I started to develop my swing feel through these two musicians was that I wasn't consciously thinking about it. It was just music that sounded like the best music I'd ever heard and inspired me so much that I naturally gravitated towards imitating it. So my conception of swing is a mix of these two artists and a few others that I became absolutely obsessed with. And now that's my conception of swing, which is probably slightly different than everybody else's. But that's what makes it beautiful, and that's what makes all these different musicians' contributions to the music so wonderful. Otherwise, jazz would be super boring. Everybody would sound like everybody else. So what's the moral of the story? If you don't like your swing feel, think about a handful of records that you are obsessed with. Have you learned everything off of those records? Can you line up with the musicians that are playing perfectly? Can you sound just like them? Here's a good test. You know you're lining up perfectly with the musician you're playing with if you actually can't hear them, if all you can hear is yourself. That means you are doing literally everything exactly like they're doing. And it's not only the notes, it's the intonation, it's the feel, it's the articulation. It's all those intangibles that no teacher can explain to you how to do. You have to do it through imitation. Have you ever heard the saying that imitation leads to innovation? That is so true, and nowhere is it more true than in jazz. So what I would like to hear from you are, what were your records that you obsessed with, that you are obsessed with, that you were obsessed with? What really formed your conception of how to play this music? I would love to hear what some of those records were in the comments below. It might actually give me something to check out that I've never heard before. And be proud of these influences. Really embrace them. That is who you are as a musician. That's where you came from. That's your backstory. All right, I'm done ranting now. I've just been asked that question so many times that I just wanted to publicly declare the way that I feel we should learn how to swing. All right, if you like this video and you agree with me, give me a thumbs up. If you think I'm an idiot and you completely and totally disagree with me, give me a big old fat thumbs down. But whether you gave me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a video. Thanks for hanging with me, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.